When you play the Game of Thrones, you
Subscribe and like.
or you die. There is no middle ground.
All right, hello YouTube, and welcome back to the Grease Goblins YouTube channel. In today's video, we are going to be doing a Q&A for my 500 subscribers special. I hope you guys all enjoy this video. I tried to answer your questions the best I possibly could. Some of your questions I didn't know the most about, so I tried my best. And yeah, thank you guys for all the comments you left. A lot of them were very unique. I thought I was going to get some maybe more like generic questions talking about maybe some of the characters that I'd already answered in the past. But you guys were very good at the questions you asked. And I appreciate everyone that took the time to comment. I know, we don't have the most time in the world, but yeah, thank you guys if that took the time to make your comments and all that. And I also want to say a big shout out to all of you guys for watching the content. Getting me to 500 subscribers. I've been doing this channel, or not this channel, but I've been doing YouTube for probably a year and a half now at this point. I had another year where I did it on another channel. Not important, but thank you guys for all the support you guys always give, all the comments saying, you love the content, or thank you for making this stuff like that. That truly makes my day, so I appreciate all that and all the support as always, and let us get into the video. All right, so the first question I actually want to open up with is a question we're going to get, or a person we're going to get back to on their comment, but I wanted to answer two of their questions first because it just seemed to make the most sense in this Q&A type style video. But on a personal note, if you feel like it, what's your first name? Also, what does the Grease Goblins refer to? And thank you for all your work. Thank you for watching and all your guys' comments as well. But on a personal note, my name is Eric Gentry, and I'm going to tell you my last name just because it refers to what I'm about to talk to in the next point. The Grease Goblins. Now, if you guys don't know, which I wouldn't expect you guys to know, this channel was actually not supposed to be just run by me. This was supposed to be something me and one of my best friends did. We were going to post like a video game type thing every week, and if you go back to the very beginning of the channel and the first few videos, that's kind of what we did. We had a series where we uploaded Until Dawn. And we had some other type one-off videos like Star Wars Battlefront 2 and stuff like that. But in short, we ended up coming up with the name, the Mr. I think it was Friss and the Gent. And that was the first name we had for the channel. If you go back on my first Song of Ice and Fire video, which is actually, funny enough, my most popular video on the channel, it was talking about the Pink Letter and Stannis, a very outdated video and stuff like that. But if you listen to that video, I actually introduced the channel Not by the Grease Goblins. And I didn't really like the name, and eventually, me and Luke were talking about what we could change the name to, and he works at like a fast food place. I'm not going to say what. I don't know how comfortable he is with that, but he had something that him and his, like coworkers were referred to each other as, and it was the Grease Goblins. And I was listening to that, I was like, that's kind of a cool name. And seeing as though at that point I was doing a Song of Ice and Fire content and more fantasy type stuff, I was like, it's not a bad name. And we just kind of stuck with it from there. So if you guys ever wondered why that was, it's not really related to a Song of Ice and Fire, it's not really related to me personally, but that is where it did actually come from. So the next question isn't really a question, but it's a comment I wanted to talk about in this video as it was posted on the announcement video. Is a theory about the weirwood trees kind of requiring this blood type sacrifice where all the kind of memories get transferred to kind of the next person or whatever like that. And it's something that I wanted to bring up, as I'm going to leave this theory and comment on the screen so you guys can read it. It's a really good one. But I think it's really interesting to think about what he's saying in this kind of comment where the weirwoods require a lot of blood. And if you're thinking about how I think the weirwood trees and the blood raven kind of in total with the three-eyed raven, I think a lot of it comes off as being very sketchy. I think Jojen paste, something that did end up happening. If you want to see my video on it, I think I have one uploaded at some point. Just go back and search it on my channel. But I think it's very likely that a lot of the sacrifices come from blood sacrifices. I think this is a really good comment, because I think a lot of Bran's powers in the story are going to be enabled from Jojen's sacrifice, and I think that's why he kind of acts so weird as well. And we do see him go off by himself, and then he's kind of not seen in the next scene where Bran's kind of drinking this paste. So I think it's something that is interesting to talk about, and these big sacrifices way back when the werewoods were just kind of being a thing makes a lot of sense, because it's based on how a lot of the magic is kind of used with the old gods. So I just wanted to bring this up, and let me know what you guys think about this theory from the Wayward White Walker. Also love the name. The next comment comes from Fallout New Vergus. All right, cool name. Hey, I think I'm your 500 subscriber. BTW, if George ever gave us a spin-off centered outside of Westeros, where would you want it to be set in? I'd personally go for something in the remnants of Sarnar. Thank you for being my 500 subscriber, if you were. And 2, where would I want it to be outside of Westeros? I would say something like a origin story of either the Doom of Valyria, or, which I think could also be really cool, and would be talking about Ashai and how Ashai came to be like that in the Shadowlands and stuff like that. I think both of those would be really interesting to talk about, and I really would like the Doom of Valyria, because I think there was a lot of interesting things going on there with the Facelessmen and all sorts of stuff like that. So, in short, that would be my answer to that question. Thank you for your question. The next question comes from Fresi Coldisi. Really cool name. I like that as well. Since I saw some gameplay footage in some of your videos, I wanted to ask, which is your favorite A Song of Ice and Fire related video game? You know, the Telltale stuff or the mods for Crusader Kings, Total War, that kind of stuff. So personally, I've never actually played Total War or Crusader Kings, but my friends had, so that's why there was that one Total War gameplay that you guys wanted the mod for. I actually found out that I believe the mod was actually discontinued from the game I was playing, or not my friend was playing, because he actually did try to do it, and he was going to do some background footage for me, but it didn't end up working. But in short, I've actually never played any of the A Song of Ice and Fire related video games. I looked them up when I started getting into it, and I just saw how the major one that was, like, I think it was like a Game of Thrones, or it was like it's kind of like an RPG type thing, was really outdated and wasn't good. I watched the Telltale game on YouTube, and I kind of just, it fell into the problem of all the other Telltale games where it just, I feel like your decision didn't actually matter, really. So I actually haven't played any, and I don't really like any of them. So let me know if you guys, or Frezisi, I hope I'm saying that right, if you like any of the games. I personally don't. I don't think I'd ever get into any of them. It blows my mind that we still don't have like a really good A Song of Ice and Fire game. It's just, you look at how much you could do in a game like that, how big that game could be. There's still a really big fan base for A Song of Ice and Fire. I think that game would do really well. But I don't know, if you could do something kind of like a Skyrim type thing. I even have looked up mods for, I was going to do a stream with Ark. I don't know if you guys know what that is. It's a survival game with dinosaurs, but basically you could mod in kind of the creatures that would be in Westeros and Essos and all that. And it was just really poorly done, and I ended up not doing a stream of that mod that I was going to do. But yeah, definitely would love to see a game for A Song of Ice and Fire. Next question comes from Guillerme Flavio. I hope I said that right. What do you think of the possibility of Aegon and Arianne getting together and forming a new alliance between Dorne and the Targaryens since Quentyn is dead? I think this is the most likely route for Dorne in the new book, or the next book in Winds of Winter. I personally think Arianne, the way she's able to manipulate guys and stuff like that, and, you know, do that stuff, I think Aegon A will think Arianne A is really beautiful and stuff like that, and 2 will gain the support of the Dornish, which he'll really need at this point. And I really do think that that's going to happen. Now, with that being said, I think this is going to be the wrong decision for Dorne. I think Dany's going to come over, and I think because Dorne chooses the wrong side, they are going to inevitably kind of die, or at least Arianne's going to die, maybe even Doran, because of them choosing the wrong side. So I think in the short term, it's going to be a very good decision, because I think Aegon, with the help of the Dornish, will end up taking King's Landing and, you know, killing Cersei and all that, or at least imprisoning them till a future time, and then inevitably they will lose to the conflict with Dany. The next question comes in from Cuenta para Comentar. You guys, I'm really struggling on your guys' names. Sorry about that, but try my best. Any plot holes, minor or major, that bother you? So I thought about this question for quite a bit, and there really aren't. Now, the problem with this question is we don't have the series completely done. So there are certain plot holes that could come up within the next 2 books that, because they're not answered at the end, are now plot holes. For me, a big one's going to be, because this depends on what George wants to go with the whole who Jon's parents are. If Jon's parents are Rhaegar and Lyanna, the statement made back in the first book by Ned that he never thinks of Rhaegar, hasn't thought of him in a few years, is going to be a very big plot hole, and something that maybe George had been planning out, because the whole idea of Ned never thinking about Rhaegar, really, it's kind of mind-boggling to me. Even if you take away Rhaegar not being the dad of Jon, right? Let's say it's Ned and Ashara. How would Ned still not think of Rhaegar for so many years? I mean, Rhaegar's brought up so many times throughout the story, and Rhaegar is someone that basically ended up killing Lyanna because of getting her pregnant or whatever happened there, and starting a big conflict that ended up, dividing the entire continent, really. And then also that's how Robert gets on the throne. Also, if you're thinking about the Mad King who, killed Ned's father and brother, which then you would obviously think of Rhaegar as well, because that's the big reason that Ned's brother ended up going to King's Landing, which then causes his father to go to King's Landing, because the whole thing was people thought Rhaegar abducted Lyanna. So for me, that has always bothered me, and that's a statement people like to bring up when they talk about Ned and Ashara, which, again, it might make sense if Ned and Ashara is a thing, but still, I think that's a plot hole statement in general for me. But yeah, that's the big one I'm going to go towards. Other plot holes could arise as this, the story kind of finishes. The other plot hole where, there are these kind of cult people or whatever that are sent to the wall that we kind of almost never hear about ever again, which is kind of a plot hole, I guess. But I really feel like that didn't need to be re-brought up into the story. Maybe they come in a little later. Who knows? Robb's will could end up being a plot hole if George doesn't really do anything with it, but I think he will. I made a video on that, I believe, last week, where I was talking about Robb's will and its impact in the story, so I hope he doesn't drop that, because I think it's a really interesting plot hole. Or, not a plot hole, I think it's a really interesting plot area. Getting into the next question we have from Bully to Please. How would you like the series to end? First of all, I would just like the series to end. I would like George to finish the books. But we might not get there, but let's just go with what I would want to happen. I really don't have a set way I want the series to end. I want the series to end in a very satisfying way, as in not like a good way, like we get all happy endings, but in a satisfying way that makes sense, right? If that's the others, right, making this compromise with the living where Jon has to maybe kill Daenerys or has to make this compromise that's a big sacrifice to his way of life, or we see the living have to make this big sacrifice, or it just ends up being the forces of the living beats the forces of the dead in a very grueling conflict that takes it maybe all the way back to King's Landing, or maybe the Trident or something like that. We have a parallel to Robert's Rebellion and all that type stuff. I just want the series to end in a good way, where it makes sense, that ties up a lot of the plot, that's going on right now, and that's where I'm going to put it. I really don't have this set ending that I want to happen. Of course, you guys know my favorite character is Stannis, right? And I think Stannis is going to die, and I think that's fine for his character, and I like that for him, right? I don't think he's ever going to sit the Iron Throne. What I want for Stannis to happen is I want Stannis to fight the dead, right? And he has this kind of one glorious charge, and he's wiped out, but, he has that thing, and maybe Stannis turns into the Night King. That would be amazing. That'd be so cool, but who knows? And that's kind of where I'm going to leave this question. I know I didn't really fully answer it to maybe how much you wanted me to, but in my opinion, really how I want the story to end is a way that is true to the story, right? Where it's something that's just not, oh, we ride off into the sunset, but I wanted something that concludes all the plots well, sees either Dany die with the Jon stuff, or maybe she dies because she comes to Mad Queen, or maybe she gets to live out kind of in Essos, or maybe she just becomes a conqueror, maybe freeing the slaves. That's how her kind of plot ends, where she goes and tries to flee the slaves and goes back to Essos and tries to rule over Slaver Bay instead of King's Landing and stuff like that. The next one is Rosa Milano. What popular theory you think won't happen in the next book? And then their bet is on Jojen Paste. I personally think Jojen Paste is going to happen, and I've talked about it in this video a little bit already. But if you would like to see my whole reasoning, I would check out that video. But what popular theory do I not think will happen in the books? I don't think that Ned and Ashara is going to happen. I know maybe the more popular theory would be Rhaegar and Lyanna, but Ned and Ashara, I feel like is a very popular theory within the community. I personally don't think it's going to happen, and I want to talk about this in like more of a breaking down video about Ashara, and I probably will this week, that to me it just doesn't make sense to have Jon's parent be Ashara. Because Ashara, I actually checked this, is only name dropped specifically 6 times within the entire 5 books main series. And for such a big reveal to be Ashara, it doesn't feel right to me. I mean, like I said, I've said this multiple times. The first time I read the books, Ashara really was not a major character to me, someone that was talked about a lot. She was very much a minor character, or somebody that was very forgettable that I almost didn't even remember. Because if you look at Rhaegar and Lyanna, how many times do they talk about Rhaegar? How many times do they talk about Lyanna? How many times is it hinted at that maybe there's some connection with Jon? I understand why people believe in Ned and Ashara, and I think it does have some reasonable evidence behind it. I just think Rhaegar Lyanna makes way more sense for the plot. I just don't see Ashara being put into this major role like Jon's mother. And I think just for the kind of fact that Rhaegar and Lyanna being Jon's parents are way more significant than Ned and Ashara. Like, what does that really add to it? I mean, maybe Jon's a sword of the morning. I feel like that it just makes way more sense for Rhaegar and Lyanna to be the parents of Jon. I'm also not a big fan of the theory that Arya is going to basically kill Jaime, then take his face and kill Cersei. Not a big fan of that either. I know that's kind of a theory that's been floating out there. I just think it'd be way more poetic if it's just Jaime, not Arya as Jaime. I just think that's kind of cheap in my opinion. I would like to kind of see just Jaime kill Cersei. And the last one I'm going to go with is I don't think the others will win. I know that's a kind of popular theory that the others will actually just win, and this will kind of be one of those things where George shows that we didn't worry about kind of, because he uses the others kind of as a metaphor for climate change and all that stuff, that, we didn't band together, and this is kind of the result, and this is what happens when you don't do those things, and the others end up winning. I don't think that's going to happen, but it could. And getting to the next question, we have Gilda Herrer. Hope I said that right. Favorite sci-fi/fantasy series that aren't related to A Song of Ice and Fire. This is going to sound very basic, but Lord of the Rings definitely is one of my favorites. It's something I've watched from a very young age, as well as Star Wars. I'm going to throw that one in there now. When I say Star Wars, I kind of mean the older films and the prequels. I don't really consider Disney stuff. I don't really like Disney Star Wars stuff like that, and that's for a different video. But yeah, I would say outside of A Song of Ice and Fire, I would say Lord of the Rings and Star Wars. I watched both of those from a very young age. My dad got me on those very early in my life. And what I will say is Lord of the Rings helped me, as well as A Song of Ice and Fire, the books especially, helped me get through a lot of bad times in my life. When my grandpa died, who was the first person in my life that I really lost, the first time I really experienced death personally. The Fellowship of the Ring, specifically the movie, always gets me through troubled times and like that, and it's one of my favorite movies too now. I'd actually probably would say it is my favorite movie. So I would say those two mainly up there. I know not the most unique answers or anything, but I would say those two definitely. Lord and Savior Diablo's question is, can we get a face reveal? This is one of my friends in real life, so you get my beautiful face. But yeah. The next question we have on is by Ultraviolet. I was just wondering why Stannis is your favorite character. Now, Stannis is my favorite character because I was someone that A, was rooting for him because it was the legitimate heir, right, and all that stuff. And two, I like kind of what struggles Stannis goes with Davos. I kind of like that we see how Stannis deals with the idea of justice and honor, and we see kind of how he handles situations where he just kind of takes no bullshit from people, and I really like his demeanor, right? And I think I like the dilemmas he goes through where has Melisandre, where he knows she's very powerful, but at the same time Stannis is trying to keep to himself that he doesn't want to do these things like burning Edric, right? It's something that in the show is something that I hate that they do to Stannis' character, where Stannis is kind of just outright willing to burn Gendry in the show. He just, but he has to have Davos talk him down from this. While in the books, it's kind of this thing where Stannis early on, when, Melisandre is kind of doing this stuff, he he's saying, no, we can't do this. And as kind of Melisandre proves to Stannis and in his eyes that his power does work, and Stannis continues to get more and more desperate, he starts to kind of cave into this a little bit. So I think that is one big reason why I like Stannis as a character. I like the kind of stuff he goes through that keeps him a very morally gray character at times. And I love, one of my favorite scenes of the entire books is the peach scene, right? When Renly and Stannis are talking. And I like the kind of dilemma of, if you're doing all this stuff, this duty stuff, this honor stuff, this justice stuff, you have to keep in mind that you need to have some enjoyment in life. And then you see on the flip side of that, Renly, where he has so much enjoyment in his life, but he doesn't have any of the things Stannis has, where he has all these values and stuff like that, that he keeps, you know, to himself and stuff like that. So that is one of the bigger reasons why I like Stannis. I also like kind of the Stag, House Baratheon, kind of all that stuff. Ours is the Fury. I like their motto and stuff. Now, I will say, House Baratheon is not my favorite house. I've seen that a few times in comments and stuff like that, that people do think my favorite house is the Baratheons. It's actually not the Baratheons. My favorite house actually is the Targaryens, and this might be a surprise just because Daenerys is not one of my favorite characters within the show or the books. And it's more or less because I like some of their historical characters. Like, I love the Dance with Dragons is one of my favorite chapters in Fire and Blood. It's probably my favorite chapter in general, as well as there's actually multiple chapters for it, kind of talking about before the, you know, what's going on and then after and all that stuff. But I really love characters like Daemon Targaryen, Rhaenyra. I love, those are two of my favorite Targaryens. I love Rhaegar, and I don't like Rhaegar like as a person. I just like kind of the idea of Rhaegar, where to the outside public he was a very, you know, happy person, maybe, where he was kind of playing the harp and stuff like that. But when you look at his character, he was kind of someone that was very sad and very prophecy driven and stuff like that. So I really like some of those Targaryens. What is your favorite Fringe theory, and is Howland Reed the High Sparrow? I do not believe Howland Reed is the High Sparrow. It is an interesting theory, but I don't believe he is. I think Howland Reed mainly is going to be working on, in this next book, with how I talked about with how Rob's will. I think his job is going to be getting Rob's will and the people that, you know, Galbert Glover and, you know, Lady Mormont to Jon to tell him that he is the legitimate heir by Robb, and now he is Jon Stark now. And I don't think Howland Reed is going to be involved with the High Sparrow stuff in the slightest. So that's where I'm going to talk about that. I think it is very possible that could be possible. And what is your favorite Fringe theory? I would say my favorite Fringe theory, that is, I would say that Euron is actually Dario. I think, you know, I just think the descriptions are very oddly, like, close together and stuff, but I just don't think the timings work out. And I think Euron constantly going back and forth to being with Daenerys, to the Iron Islands and all that, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. But I think it's a really fun theory, and I kind of wish it was canon. It would be really funny if that ended up being the thing where, like, Victarion gets there and it's actually Euron as Dario, and we're sitting here like, what? And Victarion's all confused and stuff like that. That'd be really funny. I just don't think it's a thing. But I would say that's probably my favorite Fringe theory. And thank you for the question, Nicholas Sawyer. All right, this next question is by Ramiro Men. His comment, it'll be on the screen right now. If you could rewrite anything about the series, what would it be? So I have two things here that I would preference. One thing would be, I wish George would have given us Robb POV chapters. Personally, Robb is one of my favorite characters, and I would have liked to see maybe some of his POV in, you know, the Craig, in the Westerlands, and maybe when he meets Jane Westerling, the girl he ends up marrying, or even when we would have gotten a chapter where he was kind of in the Whispering Wood and that entire battle sequence, because it's very intriguing, and it's kind of like, I wish we didn't just see it through Catelyn's eyes. As, you know, her point of view is good. I wish we could have seen inside Robb's mind a few different times. And I know maybe that would have, you know, kind of ruined the surprise for a few things, like Robb winning the Whispering Wood and his entire plan on how he beats Jaime. But I really think it would have been cool if we would have gotten maybe a couple. And I'm not saying a ton, but just, you know, a couple Robb POV chapters, kind of split up the POV chapters with Robb and Catelyn. And then the second thing would be, I kind of wish Stannis would have won the Battle of the Blackwater, but again, I see how as a narrative that just wouldn't have made a good narrative, because a lot of the plot and or story would have ended right then and there. Rob wouldn't have been killed, all that stuff. So that's more something that I just kind of would have liked, Stannis sitting on the throne or whatever. But, you know, I want to throw that one in there as well. All right, the next question comes from Spider Egg. Interesting name, I like it. But given your mistrust of the Maesters, how about a Pycelle analysis? So that'll be the first part of the question, as well as, was he just a feeble old Lannister toady, or does he have another agenda? Now, if you guys don't know, I've done a Maester conspiracy series videos talking about a lot like the Dance with Dragons and how I think the Maesters had a big pivotal role in starting that, as well as their ability of getting rid of the dragons and the Targaryens at large. Now, Maestro Pycelle was definitely involved in this, and do I think he was someone that was definitely a Lannister guy? I think so. I think Tywin's time as Hand of the King and his ability to rule, I think Pycelle really latched on to Tywin, and we also see this idea that, or for me, that the Maesters want to get rid of the Targaryens and the dragons. They're magical. The Faith, as well as kind of the Maesters in general, have not really had a good track record with the Targaryens, and kind of don't really line up with a lot of their views, like incest and all that stuff, as well as the dragons and as a whole, and magic. So I think when we look at Pycelle, if you look at what his two biggest motivations could have been, as someone who admired Tywin and came to respect Tywin a lot over people like the Mad King, as well as his Maester background kind of going against the Targaryens, I think it's very obvious to see that Pycelle definitely had his own motives to get rid of the Mad King. And then going into our Baratheons rule, I think that kind of just comes with everything that went on with the Hand of the King. I think Pycelle definitely was a big Tywin supporter and Lannister supporter as a whole. And that's really kind of where I go with this character, because I think a lot for the Maesters, that once the Targaryens were kind of gone and magic mostly was gone, because of like what we see with the Targaryens with Dany, is that once the dragons come back into the world, a lot of the magic comes back as well. So I think for the Maesters at this point, they really didn't have a lot of agendas going on with King's Landing and all that. So for me, I think Pycelle was mainly a Lannister guy after the Robert's Rebellion stuff went on, and was just somebody that was loyal to Tywin as well. Now, the second part of this question is, also, since you came to the books after watching the show, which characters or theories have you changed your views of? If you don't know, I watched the show up to about season 4 before I ever started reading the books. When season 5 had started, I'd actually already read through all the books at that point. But at season 4, I decided, okay, I really was into the series. I had been for, I'd say a year or two. And I wanted to get into the books. And my dad's friend had the books, and I read through them all. Now, I will say characters I changed my views on quite a lot. Theories, not so much. I feel like going into season 5, I really didn't have a lot of theories. I wasn't somebody that... I was at a very younger age to where I really didn't kind of put together theories and stuff like that. So I won't even say that, because I think a lot of my theories have come from the books, not the shows. So I'm not really going to touch on that too much. But characters, Catelyn is the big, obvious one. If you guys have watched my videos, you know I do not like Catelyn. Catelyn was a character in the show that I really liked. She was somebody that I hated when she died and all of that, and I really liked Catelyn, even though she made a lot of mistakes. But as the books go on, and I picked up on a lot of details, and I've made countless videos on Catelyn, I feel like her motivations and her character arc as a whole in the books kind of make her more of a character I dislike. In the show, I feel like they very much kind of made her more likable and didn't give her a lot of the horrible things she says to like Jon, or kind of her, I don't know, her treatment of Jon and kind of the manipulating she does with Ned, in my opinion, in the first few chapters kind of puts me off. And then I think a lot of the bad mistakes she makes are just worse in the books than they are the show. Like the show, it's kind of makes sense why she releases Jaime, even though it's still dumb. In the books, it's kind of really stupid, and her plan is really dumb. I think that's one big one. And then I would say Jorah Mormont was a character I really liked in the show, and in the books, I really don't like that much. He just comes off really weird and kind of like a pedophile / pervert kind of guy. And that's really all I have to say on that topic. But thank you for the question. Moving on to the Lord of the Tridents question. Now, he's basically asking, as I was reading the books, what theories did I come up that ended up being wrong or correct? Now, this is interesting because, again, as I've said, I've actually watched the show up to season 4. So going into the books, I didn't really think there was going to be much different, which there ended up being a lot kind of different of the first like 3 books. And going into the first or the 4th and the 5th book, I had a lot of theories based upon Jon and kind of what was going to go on with Stannis. I didn't actually believe that Jon was going to be the Lord Commander. I actually thought they were going to give that to somebody else, like an Alistair Thorne, and they were going to make Jon kind of miserable and going through with that conflict, continuing with Alistair Thorne and Jon. But I thought it was going to kind of be the opposite way of what it ended up being, where Jon was put in the place of power and we see his way of ruling. But I definitely didn't kind of expect that. With Stannis, I also kind of thought, when I'm on my first initial reading, that Stannis was just going to kind of stay at the wall and just rally the men he had then to help defend the wall instead of trying to take Winterfell, which is what he ended up doing, which I don't really know why I had that theory when I was reading the books for the first time, but that's kind of just something I had. But that's pretty much the main theories I can think of when I was rereading the book or reading the books for the first time. I think there's just so much going on when you're first reading the books that you don't even have time to theory craft. But that's just me. I'm someone that's not the best person. When I read one thing, I'm picking up on a lot of the details. Rereading the books multiple times has helped me kind of pick up on some of those details. So again, thank you for your question. All right, so we have a couple questions here from Dan Siegel. Hope I'm saying your name right. And I'll answer the first one here is, if Melisandre's God can bring people back from the dead, does that mean he is the one true God? Is there evidence that any of the other gods exist? So this is an interesting question. I personally think there is some higher work going on with Melisandre's God, because we just see too many signs of where this actually does happen with, you know, Lady Catelyn turning into Stoneheart, with Beric Dondarrion and how many times he's revived, as well as we see some things where you're seeing things through the flames and all that. Melisandre does her tricks as well. But there is evidence that there could be another god, especially with the Drowned God. We see that Patchface, the kind of jester type character, does a lot of kind of this telling the future kind of through song type thing, where he predicts the Red Wedding and predicts a bunch of other stuff. So I do think there is maybe a chance that the Drowned God is also real, as maybe is kind of told. But that also could be maybe just Melisandre's God bringing him back as well, just in a different manner, as Patchface is brought up kind of under the water. That's why we kind of look at him from the Drowned God perspective. But there's also evidence there could be the old gods, as we see the Weirwoods with the Three-Eyed Raven and all that, with Blood Raven and all that stuff. So there is a good chance that there is other gods. I'm not sure right now if Melisandre's God is the one true God. I think there's a lot of other powers going on right now, and I'm not sure we'll ever get any of that actually explained to us, just because I think George likes to leave kind of the religion of Westeros or of Essos kind of up in the air, and I think he kind of makes us as a reader choose what religion we think is really there and going on. It's kind of like the real world. So that's what I'll kind of, I'll talk about in the first one. So with the Drowned God, I actually don't know a lot about the Drowned God, and I'm not going to pretend like I do. If anybody would like to comment what they know about the Drowned God, personally, I don't know a lot about the Drowned God. I know, about the Patchface stuff, where it's kind of like his resurrected thing, and that the Ironborn believe in the Drowned God, and that's pretty much the extent of my knowledge about the Drowned God. I was never too big into getting into the religion of Westeros and Essos. I'm more kind of not on that stuff. But if you want to let me know in the comments what you believe and answer this question, go ahead. Now, the third thing, any idea what the voice Varys heard from the fire said when he was cut? Was it Melisandre's God speaking? Now, I think it is something that has to do with the R'hllor religion, just based upon the fact that Varys kind of helps Tyrion against Stannis so much because of this. Now, for me, I think what he probably heard was how he was either going to die or something along those lines. I think the idea of Daenerys burning him for kind of lying to her, introducing Aegon to the story, and I think Varys is definitely going to be on the, Phaegon team and not on the Daenerys team. I think he definitely could be the one getting burned by Daenerys and the dragons, and that could definitely be something of what, he could have been hearing. Kind of the whole idea of maybe he hears Daenerys' voice and hearing the maybe I sentence you to death or to burn or something like that. That is definitely what I could see kind of happening with that. Kind of what happened in the show, but just done a lot better and kind of relating that back to when he was cut, and maybe that is what he heard. All right, and the last question we have is, what do you think is the significance of Asshai and Stygia? Also, do you think we will ever get a complete world map? Personally, no. I do not think we will ever get a complete world map. I think George kind of wants to leave that up to a mystery and stuff like that. But maybe we do. I'm not sure. I personally don't think we will, though. But the significance of Asshai and Stygia. Now, Asshai is interesting because it's a lot of where our Red Priest kind of characters study at. As we know, Melisandre studies there as well. And I think what we also see is that Daenerys kind of gets this dream again from Quaithe that she must go to the Shadowlands. And I think that kind of references Asshai. And I think Daenerys will end up going to Asshai at one point in her kind of conquering the rest of Essos before she comes to Westeros, in my opinion. But I think what the significance to them is, A, we know a lot of mysterious things come out of Asshai. We know there are a lot of kind of religions that come out of there. And we also know that Euron, with a lot of his kind of weird things like the silence, come from Asshai. So what I think is maybe Daenerys goes to Asshai and finds out some more of her interesting past, or learns some new information and stuff like that. I'm not sure. I think Asshai and Stygia especially, are kind of very much kept in a mystery by George. We're not given a ton of information or a lot of the background. We don't even know the real background of Asshai and Stygia. So personally, that's kind of all I have to say on the topic. I don't know a tremendous amount about it. But if you guys have your own theories about Asshai and Stygia, please let me know down in the comments. Thank you guys all for your questions. Thank you for watching. Thank you for helping me get to 500 subscribers and growing this community and channel as you guys have. And I'm looking forward to the future content we're going to do the rest of the year and pushing towards 1,000 subscribers. So I will see you guys all in the next video. Thank you guys for watching again, and bye, guys.
If you think this has a happy ending, you haven't been paying attention.